Welcome to the whirlpool of the unsolved. I'm the host, Frank. Thanks for tuning in. Here I talk about unsolved cases, mysteries, unsolved crimes, and more, from some of the most popular cases known to the ones that aren't really spoken much about. So I hope you enjoy the show. In today's episode, we will be talking about the case of Dr. Holly Harvey Crippen, the Doctor of Death. A man that was hung for murdering his own wife. But times have changed. The truth may no longer be the truth. He was believed to have done the crime, a marriage that was truly filled with conflicts and affairs. Love wasn't a common thing in the relationship, leading to what possibly was his doing. Taking the life of his wife and trying to start a new one that wouldn't be as his was, but better. Or was this all not his fault? Was he framed? Was he an innocent man? So this is the case of, like I said, it's the case of Dr. Holly Harvey Crippen, who is also known as Dr. Death, Doctor of Death. Now, this was a case that I really took my time. Well, I take my time in technically all of them. But this is one that they definitely had some documentaries and things like that, so I definitely took my time into watching some and actually reading, and it's very strange. A lot of the cases and a lot of the things that we talk here, clearly unsolved, does have some sort of strange factor. Now, this is definitely one of them, and when reading into it and really researching, it really brings me to think, was it actually him who had killed his wife? So this is one of those cases where apparently they got the killer. They hung him. He was put to death. But later on, with new technology, things changed. And now there's this, did he actually kill his wife? So this is why it's on this show right now. This is why it's on this episode and we're talking about it. It's because things has changed and we want to dig in here and actually take a look and wonder, was it really Dr. Crippen that murdered his wife? So the victim that we're talking about is, apparently is to be believed Corrine Crippen. So her name was actually Corrine, and technically she goes by so many names. I'm not gonna lie. So Corra, which is her nickname, her real name, well, not even her real name, but her name that she changed it to was Corrine. Crippen being her last name after marriage, but she performed under a name called Belle Elmore. And as you can tell, I said perform, so you know that she was in performing. But she was born apparently as, and forgive me if I'm butchering this, Kunigunde Makamotsky. And apparently she was German or from German descent. So if I butchered that name, I apologize. But then apparently the victim may have been, and this is strange, we'll get into it further down, but apparently the victim is his wife, but now it's possible that the victim may have been male and not even his wife at all. So I'll talk about that later on down in the episode. So the victim, we don't really know, but what he was hung for was for apparently killing his wife, and that's how you know it's already a strange episode. Now, the location of the incident was in the home, which was, I think it was 39. The house was 39, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 39 Hilldrop Crescent, Camden Road, Holloway, London. So that's where apparently this all occurred where they found the body and all that craziness basically started. So we already have something wild and strange already from the very beginning. And I'm not sure if this is going to be a two-part episode. It may be a two-part episode, being that we just talk a little bit about the case from the beginning, and then we'll more like talk about Crippen and his wife in the beginning, and then possibly do a part two where we're talking about the investigation and some of that. So, and the theories and things of that sort in the second part. So, bear with me, and I hope that you guys enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed actually researching it and really looking into it. So we're gonna talk about what happened, what a little bit about, Dr. Crippen and his wife, kind of get to know them. Okay, so Harley Harvey Crippen, he was born in actually Coldwater, Michigan, so he's actually American, and went to college for homeopath, going to the University of Michigan, then graduating in 1884 from Cleveland Homeopathic Medical College. So this man was an educated man. He had went to college for homeopath. So you know that he was actually very intelligent. He was married before being remarried, which eventually he got married to Corra. So he actually did, before Corra, he was married prior. His first wife, her name was Charlotte. She ended up dying of a stroke in 1892. He did have a son in his first marriage, which he left in the care of his parents when his son was 2 years old. So we already kind of have an idea of, this man, he was an educated man who went to college, and he was married prior. And now, apparently he had a kid, and there's not much that goes on with his kid, at least from what I've gotten. It doesn't look like he ended up back in his kid's life, at least from what I read, because clearly he ended up moving to London and everything like that, and he left his son in his parents' care. So, there's not much about that. So that's right there. That's kind of upsetting to me as a parent. Just saying, but I'm not gonna go there. Being qualified as a homeopath, he started actually to practice in New York. So he started practicing his practice in New York, where he eventually met his second wife, the wife who is considered to be his victim. So this is Corra that we're talking about. So her name was Corra Turner. So practically her name before getting married, her last name at least, was Turner. And to be honest with you, when I was doing this, it was confusing me how many names this lady went by. Like, literally, this lady went by a lot. Like, her born name, her name that was given to her when she was born, is nothing compared to the name that she changed it to, which she changed it to Corrine Turner, and her nickname is Corra. But then she performed, she was a performer, and she performed under the stage name Belle Elmore, which, to be honest with you, I think it's just too many names. But I guess that was a thing back in the day, and it is what it is. And I guess she changed it because I know a lot of people, at least from what I heard, a lot of people change their names due to the fact that changing their name makes them seem more attractive, especially if you can't pronounce their name. So it makes sense. She was considered a would-be music hall singer. So she was considered a hall singer. At least she wanted to be a hall singer. And she was really big into performing. That's one thing that I've noticed researching it. She was really deeply into it. That was her career. That's what she wanted. So she was definitely deep into that. She was also known to have open affairs. And this comes to play later on, at least for my theories and what I think may have happened. But yeah, she was known to have affairs. Like, that right there just kind of gives you an idea of where this marriage is going, and how things really were. They had married in 1894, right? And Crippen at one point in 1894 worked for a homeopathic pharmaceutical company under Dr. Munyons. So this man, he had a really good job. Like he had a good job, at least in New York. And being that he was certified and all that stuff, and actually had a degree in that, I'm pretty sure he did well. Then in 1897, both Corra and Hawley Crippen moved to England. So from living in the U.S. and him having a job, they end up moving to England. Even though knowing that his qualifications were going to be no good, right? To continue as a doctor in England, he ended up moving. Okay, he ended up moving. I don't get why. It is what it is. I guess it was probably his wife. And I read a little bit into it, not too much into it, but I can tell that, Cora being a performer, I believe that she probably had a better chance in England than what she had in the US. And the details kind of add to it. Like a lot of her friends were in England. So, and they were very well known friends, at least in England. So it kind of, like I said, it kind of confirms what I believe in the sense that they decided to go to England more for her career than his. Though he continued working as a distributor of patent medicines, Cora, on the other hand, was very social and socialized with a variety of the players at that time. So, like I said, she knew a lot of people, including Little Hawthorne of the Hawthorne sisters and Lil's husband, manager John Nash. If you didn't know, Lil Hawthorne was a stage performer as well. So, like I said, it goes back to the fact that she did know some, some performers, some people actually in England. So it makes sense for her, especially if, her career isn't doing well in New York, for her to go somewhere where she knows plenty of people and possibly growing her career there. Now, the documentary that I seen, it really showed her as like dedicated and addicted to basically the limelight and her in performing, and that was big for her. And at some point, basically, Hawley, Dr. Crippen, he was basically her manager. Like he helped her out, from what I've seen in the documentaries and a little bit from what I've read too. So he was very accepting of her career and him wanting her to succeed, from at least what I've seen. Now, Hawley Crippen was then fired by Dr. Munyons in 1899 for what was said, and this goes back into him, being a manager. Crippen spending too much time managing his wife's stage career. So, like I said, it goes back to that. He really was helping her in the sense of making sure that her career was actually going the right direction. He really cared about her success, in because you got to think about it. If you're spending time and you're being let go from your job because apparently you're doing so much in your wife's career and helping manage her career, there's a reason for it. You're being let go because you're doing more of that than what you're doing. So, what you're supposed to do as your job. So, after being let go from Dr. Munyons, he became a manager of Druitt's Institution for the Deaf, where eventually he hired the woman that would eventually become his love interest, and that the woman that he would have an affair with, and not only an affair, but become his mistress completely. Her name was Ethel Leneve, who was hired in 1900 to be Dr. Crippen's typist. The affair started sometime in 1905. So 1900, he hired her, but apparently the affair didn't start until roughly 5 years later. And I'm saying roughly because there are articles And the documentaries that kind of push the timeline closer to when he hired her, and some pushing it further. So this is definitely what I feel more comfortable. So let's say 1900 to 1905, around that range, is when they started to have an affair. Now, the Crippens, after moving to England, right, did move around quite a bit. So when they moved to London, they didn't just find their, forever home. They moved quite a bit. Um, the same year that the affairs had started for Holly Crippen, they finally had settled at their new home at 39 Hilldrop Crescent, Camden Road, Holloway, London. Now, they weren't always living there alone. So this is where you can kind of see where this is going to go, okay? So they did take in lodgers at times to help out with the bills, because Hawley didn't make much in general, okay? So, and the reason being is because, like I said, he was an educated man, and he had a really good job. And in New York, in America, his degree means something. When you move outside of the country, let's be realistic, your degree means almost nothing. You would have to go back to school and, get another degree just to work in that country for what you went to school in whatever country you had that degree prior. So his job, he wasn't making much. So in order to continue paying the bills and continue living the life that they wanted to live, they took in people to stay in their home, so they were able to continue to live the lifestyle that they wanted to and continue to pay the bills. Eventually, Corra, being known for having affairs, had one with one of the lodgers, which Dr. Crippen then turned around and took Leneve as his mistress completely. So when I say took Leneve as his mistress completely, meaning that at this point, he was like, you know what? Okay, whatever. It is what it is. I'm going to have this chick as my, side girl or my mistress, indefinitely. Like this is the woman that I really want as somebody that I can continuously go and see. Now, the crazy thing is, if you remember in the very, very beginning of all of this, of what we were talking about, she was known to have open affairs, meaning that she really didn't care if she were caught. And I don't know about you guys, but me personally, I would hate that. I wouldn't even deal with that. That would be unacceptable to me. And I don't even think that back in this time it was acceptable either. So I don't understand why Dr. Crippen stood with her. Maybe it's because of her career. Maybe it was because he had hope that she was going to blow up. Who knows why exactly he stood with her, knowing these things and acknowledging that this was her character. This is a part of her. Now, clearly he wasn't right for having an affair either, because, two wrongs don't make a right, to be very, very honest. But he eventually did have an affair. And I'm pretty sure it's after knowing the fact that she's had affairs prior. And God knows why they moved to London. Like I said, it may have been for, Corra's career, but it could have also been because of affairs. And if that was the case, then he was probably already tired and already decided in his mind that he was going to do the same thing. And Leneve, she comes in and becomes a part of his life. And from at least the documentary and the articles that I read, she was a younger woman. So it was possible that he was attracted to her being younger. And the fact that, in one of the documentaries, forgive me, it was one of those things that it was exciting to him. Apparently, it was exciting to him, and he liked the feeling of doing something bad, at least from the documentary that I watched. And if that's the case, it makes sense. But at the same time, it can be more of an emotional situation where he was just tired of it. he didn't want to let her go for whatever reason, especially financial, because you got to think about it. If they had to accept lodgers in to help out with the bills and things like that, that means he didn't make enough money. And if he wanted to leave, it would have been a struggle. And knowing that her career was better than his, it would have made sense for him to stick around, if you ask me. I'm not saying that it's okay. I'm just saying that that's probably what may have happened. Okay? But here is where it gets a bit dark. After a party in the Crippin's home on January 31st of 1910, Corra apparently disappeared. Like I said, it gets a bit dark. This is where we're kind of getting into what may have happened to her a bit. What had happened, some people may say they know, others have their own theories, and so on and so forth. But I will sit here and say this for sure. The police found their killer, or at least we think. See, Dr. Crippen was claimed to have killed his wife, which, as you know, I said earlier, after Corra went missing, her friends. So, before I get any deeper, Corra was very social. She knew people. That is for sure. And the truth of the matter is that when you know a lot of people and you have good relationships with a lot of people and people care about you, people will always ask for you. And if Dr. Crippen did kill, his wife, my thing is, why would you do such a thing knowing that she is very social and people actually really like her? You know what I mean? That boggles my mind, and that also puts me to think whether it was really him or not. Okay? Now, after Corra went missing, her friend, the strong woman Kate Williams, known as Volcana, had contacted the police, okay? So she called the police and basically let them know that she believed something is wrong with her friend. Her friend went missing. She hasn't seen her friend, and so on and so forth. So her friend, Volcana, she basically rings the alarm and lets the cops know, the police know, like, hey, something is wrong. My friend hasn't, spoken to me. I haven't heard from my friend, whatever the case may be. And now it goes back to, like I said, her being very social. The lifestyle that she had, being a performer, definitely means that she had connections or some sort of connection, and that she did have some sort of social life that really meant that she was up and about and talking to people consistently. Because you got to think about it, as a performer or anything in that realm, you have to be very active in that lifestyle in order to continue to be relevant. So her friend is like, hey, I haven't heard anything from her. Go ahead and check her out, see if she's well, because I think she's gone. She's missing, okay? Now, the police started to investigate, but they really didn't put too much effort in it. Now, they did start investigating more seriously the disappearance of Corra when John Nash and his wife, Lil Hawthorne, requested a personal friend of Scotland Yard Superintendent Frank Frost. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Now, remember, Lil Hawthorne, she is a performer as well. She is known. So we're going back to the fact that Corra knew people, and apparently this person actually knew a superintendent in that district, in that division, and requested him directly to actually pursue and investigate this situation. So now you already have an idea how serious it's getting, okay? The house was searched, okay? And let me tell you something. This house was searched actually numerous times. So just to let you know, they did search it numerous times. And it kind of makes me wonder, did they even do a good job in general? Because we'll get there later. But when they find what they find, it's like, dang, did you really have to search the house this many times? So makes me wonder if they even decided to do their jobs right in the first place. The house was eventually searched, but no evidence was found. So nothing was found, okay? Anything that would relate to foul play or her disappearance. Nothing. Now, before I get any deeper, I will throw out that Crippen was suspected of doing something to his wife for multiple reasons, and those reasons are very important to consider. So, one is that he told her friends, right, and even the cops and even the police, that she had gone back to the States, specifically to California. At first, it was apparently to take care of somebody in her family. Um, but as time went on and the police asked about her even more, as well as her friends, he told them that she had actually gone to the States because she was actually sick. And then apparently she died and she was cremated and all that crazy stuff. Like I'm telling you, this man had a reason for everything, which to be honest was strange to her friends altogether because she was very open with them. Like I said, she had a really good relationship with them. She was very social, and they knew about the scar on her abdomen and all that good stuff. Like I'm telling you, this was a woman that was very social. But that wasn't the strangest thing, nor the thing that pinned him to having have done something to her. After she had apparently left to the States, Leneve, which was his mistress, had eventually moved into the house. And not only did she move into the house, but she was wearing Corra's clothing in the open as if nothing had happened, like if it was normal for her to do such a thing. Okay, so Leneve moves in and takes basically Corra's spot in Dr. Crippin's life, making it seem like something, it made people feel like something was wrong and that Crippen had something to do with whatever had happened to Corra. For crying out loud, you have this guy that's claiming that his wife went to California to take care of a relative, right? And then he moves in his mistress, right? And his mistress is living basically the life of Corra's in the sense that she's wearing her clothing with no problems in the open, like nothing ever happened. Now, in one of the documentaries that I was watching, he made it seem like she was his servant. But how is she your servant if you're allowing her to wear your wife's clothing? And not only that, it's the fact that he was known not to have much money. So how can you actually have a servant not having much? So a whole bunch of strange things in that case. When it comes to the disappearance of Corra, like it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. Because when you're looking at the line, of what's happening, you have a woman that disappears, doesn't say anything to her friends about her going to California for family or whatever the case may be, right? And then you have a woman that immediately moves in to the house, is claimed to be a servant to, let's be honest, a broke man, right? And then she's actually wearing Corra's clothing. And then later on, this man is saying, yeah, my wife died in the States. She was cremated. She was sick. But her friends didn't know anything whatsoever. Which, like I said, doesn't make sense, doesn't bode well. And I'm pretty sure it didn't bode well with the police. I'm pretty sure it didn't bode well with her friends. So it's very strange nonetheless. Now, like I said earlier, this is definitely going to be a part. It's going to have a part 2. I can tell you that right now, because we're not even towards the end of this. So I definitely want to make sure that we finish this on the next episode, and we're just gonna basically start up where we ended, and that's talking a little bit more about the disappearance, and then we're gonna go into the investigation, the evidence, the trial, and all that good stuff. And I promise it's gonna be worth it. This is a strange case, and I know already that you're probably like, you know what, he did it. It gets stranger when we get into the present, or if not, even in the trials, it gets a bit strange. So trust me when I say it's going to be well worth coming back to listen to part 2. Now, with all that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Whirlpool of the Unsolved. Check in next week for part 2 of this episode, and make sure that you like the podcast and follow the social media pages. Instagram at Whirlpool of the Unsolved Podcast, Twitter at WOT Unsolved Pod, and the Facebook page. Till next time.